Welcome back to Sidewalk Skyline podcast. Today I'm talking with Mark Collins. Mark is a consultant on church growth and revitalization. He's a leadership coach. He's been a pastor, a district leader, and a process guru to many. He and his wife, Wendy, live at Victoria Shores on Lake Ontario. Mark is a surfer, a sailor, and a cyclist, and a friend to me in ministry over decades. Welcome, Mark. Good to have a conversation with you today.
Thank you, Kevin. It's really an honor for me to be chatting in this venue with you. It's always good just for you and I just to talk.
It is. And we never know what direction we're gonna head, but I did try to script out a few questions, and if we get any dull moment, I can always look at my page and go, okay, here's the next question. I don't
Sure.
think I'll need it though.
Yeah, we'll be good.
Yeah. So I often ask guests about their formative years and their spiritual journey. What was it in your upbringing and your spiritual journey that prepared you for this lifetime of serving the church and ministry leaders?
I think right from the get-go, my earliest memories, both my mom and my dad were followers of Jesus. They were believers. We attended actually a little independent church, a Pentecostal church, although it was just kind of outside the realm of I don't know, normality. And it was a small church. It was in these folks' home, and maybe 40 or 50 people gathered. And in the early 60s, because of the age of the pastor, the church began to decline a little bit. And I remember distinctly going to that church, and I would have been 6 or 7 at the time. And I remember the pastor standing up one Sunday morning and saying, the church is going to close. And that was just a shock to me. But he said, but next week, we're all going to go over to Evangel Pentecostal Church, which is about 2 blocks away, which was a thriving little Pentecostal church, maybe, a couple hundred people. And he said, we're going to go over there, and we're not going to ask for any leadership positions. We're going to go and we're going to serve. And I remember my mom and dad just kind of, yep, that's okay. And the next Sunday, we went to a brand new church. And I remember going, and my dad right away, he already knew some of the men there, and my mom knew some of the ladies. And so we became normalized very, very quickly there. And that was the earliest, remembrances of my church background. Then as I grew, I always knew that being in a Pentecostal church, I knew that I had to make some kind of commitment. And so as that began to stir and percolate in my spirit, by the time I was 15 or 16 years old, I did the walk. I on a Sunday night, I went to the altar, and I didn't want to do what I had watched other people do, go and then, do whatever they wanted to do, and then 6 months later go back to the altar. I figure, I kind of want to make this commitment once, and I want it to be, this is my commitment. And so I did it. And within, days, I was changing my activity, changing things about the way I was living, even though I was only a teenager. And I hadn't lived a life of crime. I don't have a testimony like that. I have a testimony of God's preserving power and his, walking with me. And yeah, so and the good thing, I think, Kevin, was the church that we attended. I really only attended one church up until I went to Bible college. And that church had men on the board and women in leadership in that church who were dedicated and faithful. And the pastors were great pastors. You know, our pastor Don Emmons went on to be a district superintendent. Victor Brown went on to be the president of the Bible College. John Scarr went on to pastor a large church in California. Niles Thorne, of course, is in our district still, followed by Bruce Schwint, who pastored the Evangel Church for over 25 years. And that was kind of, and Dick Green. I'm leaving out Dick Green. Dick Green was formative in the formation of my own personal life. Just the way he called us to serve God in every aspect. It wasn't just he told us that you just didn't have to, go to Bible school and be a pastor. You can serve Jesus in every capacity. And I believed that, and I did that until the day I found that I think I was called to Bible school. And then that moment came. I had already had a career working in manufacturing, working in building combines and building tree harvesting equipment, working for Sears Canada. And there came this moment that I knew I had to be prepared for the future, for what was going to come next. And I had no aspirations, Kevin, as to being a pastor or going to the mission field. I honestly, I can remember Wendy and I saying, well, if God calls us to Wawa, not no disparaging to Wawa, but at that time, that was kind of the farthest reaches of the world to me. And if it was like that, well, that was fine. And I can remember in our second year of Bible school, all of my friends were saying, oh, God's called me to be a missionary. God's called me to this. And I really felt left out. I thought, wow, God just called me to come here and prepare. And now what? And it was very, very shortly after that. It was a message one morning Carl Verge was preaching. And I got to throw back to when I was a kid, probably when I was 12 or 13. We lived on a farm. And I can remember I used to love the spring because my dad let me take days off school and I could go plow in the field. And I can remember I was about 12 years old and I was plowing, and it was May. It was a beautiful day. And I thought to myself, this is my life. I'm going to plow a field for the rest of my life. I'm going to be a farmer, and that'll be just okay. This is a good life. And that memory, that picture stuck in my mind. And Carl Verge was preaching one Thursday chapel, and I can't remember what his message was at all, Kevin. I wish I could. And when he got all done, and you'll remember those Thursday chapels, there was 500 of us crammed into that gym. And as soon as he said amen, everybody just stood up and took off. And he closed in prayer and he said amen. And then he took a step back and he grabbed the mic again. He said, everybody, wait, stop. I have something to say. And he said this, some of you are going to go and break new ground. And then he basically did a mic drop. He just put the mic down and walked off in typical Carl Verge fashion. And everybody else who was hungry just left the gym. And I was there all alone, sobbing, because suddenly I realized this is my call to break new ground. And when he said break new ground, it was like that image came back to my mind, and it wasn't just plowing fields. It was breaking new grounds in different areas. And that was towards the end of the second year. And I had fast tracked a lot of my courses. I took summer courses and everything because I went to Bible college as a married student with 2 kids. We sold our home in Brantford. We sold our big sailboat, our nice cars and everything. We moved into a single wide 60-foot trailer in a trailer park, which was a really good preparation for ministry. and yeah, and at that moment, it was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And within probably, I want to say days, but it was probably more weeks, I got a call from Laurie Gibbons, who Laurie and I had worked in youth ministry together. I had traveled with him through the north and did northern. I would take my vacation time from my job, and I would travel with Laurie in the north with a ministry team, and we would go to the churches in northern Highway 11, Highway 17. And he called me late at night and he said, "Hey, listen, remember that day that we talked about planting a church in Brantford?" And I said, "Yeah, I remember that." He goes, "Well, Evangel Church wants to plant a church in West Brantford. And so the only guy I can think of that would want to do that with me is you. So will you come and do that with me?" And this is late at night. He goes, "Oh, by the way, there's no money. There's nothing. Like, you just coming." Typical Lori. And I was like, "Yeah, okay." And basically that was our decision to move to Brantford, back to Brantford, which we never dreamed. I would have never sold my house in Brantford. I would have kept it because we never dreamed we'd be back. And God takes us back and puts us back in Brantford. And that was kind of the shaping. That's the mechanical stuff, but all of the all of the intimate things that the Spirit was doing in my heart throughout that season. The whisperings, the nudgings, yeah, this is the direction to go. There were sometimes we had invitations to go to other churches, and there was just never that witness of the Spirit to say, "Yeah, this is where you're to go." And I would call pastors back and apologize and say, "Yeah, this is a great opportunity. I should take it. I'm stupid not to, but I'm turning it down. I can't do that."
I think that's probably why you and I can end up with very long conversations, because we both got that same kind of heart and calling for new ground. And, part of my memories of you, I remember it must have been when you were in Bible college. I remember seeing you drumming somewhere, and you had a beautiful kit, and
I
you
did.
had some finesse in your playing that, as a budding musician, that piqued my interest. But and then moving on in time, you came and pastored in Leamington. I was here pastoring in Windsor, and really got to know you better when you were in Leamington. One of my favorite memories is when we took the pastors from our section, and you drove the short bus full of pastors onto the Peely Ferry, and we went to Peely Island for the day. A beach day with pastors at Peely Island. What could be better?
Better, yeah. That was a great time. And I remember, I'm trying to think of his name, the pastor from Windsor, and he brought like a one of those containers you buy at Walmart full of meat. Do you remember that? We all brought hot dogs and hamburgers and whatever, and he had this big basket full of steaks and everything, and we're like, "Well, I'm sitting with him." It was, yeah. That was a
Oh,
great day.
yeah, yeah. And then in Leamington, you took a church that was, let's say, well aged, and a church that um, you changed the dynamics of that church in such a way that you took the lid off for its growth and development. And today, it still is going strong with other leadership. But that you part of the new ground was going to the old ground sometimes,
Yeah.
and digging deeper than had been dug. And then you went to district, Western Ontario district office, and I remember when you told me, "Yeah, I'm going to Burlington to work with David Shepherd." And then after Dave, you got to work with your old friend Lori, and then with Jason. And when you think back to your early days in district office working with David Shepherd, what was that like for you? What to work with David Shepherd? What did you learn from being alongside him?
I, I think I think um, one of the richest training grounds I had was the first few years working with David. Um, if you know David and you know me, we are polar opposites.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when I told Wendy David would like me to come to the district office and work with him, she laughed. She was like, Sarah, how could this ever be? This is
Yeah.
not going to happen. And in those early days, I mean, David and I, we had some interesting discussions, but what I learned very quickly was a man of tremendous spiritual depth, Kevin. He he heard from God. He never had to play the God card.
Right.
He he kept the cards close to his chest and he lived it out. Um, there were times when he would exercise spiritual authority. I never really understood spiritual authority. I thought I did until I went to a few board meetings or congregational meetings that were going to be very, very difficult. And David would have me drive. He'd say, "We're going together, you drive." And he would sit in the passenger seat interceding
Hmm.
in prayer and in tongues and literally physically bearing the burden of what was about to happen. And when I pulled in the parking lot, he would just, "Okay, Mark, let's go in." And he would go in with spiritual authority. And to this day, I marvel at that. It taught me that if you're going to operate in that authority, you have to live in that authority. You just don't go take it off the shelf.
Right.
You take it in your briefcase everywhere you go. And that's what I learned. And what a visionary. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
David Shepard, visionary of visionaries. He allowed us to do things. He allowed me to do things in our district that when I would go in and suggest things to him, he would kind of look at me and, "Oh, Mark, I don't know, but if you think it's okay, you go ahead."
Mm.
And if you mess up, I'll be on your tail in a minute.
Yeah.
but but just allowed us to to see the full scope of what the Holy Spirit wanted to do in our churches in terms of church planting and church of caring for pastors and church of our indigenous ministries in the north, and like all of those cultural ministries, all of those things. David just opened the door to all of those. I mean, the other thing is my favorite was walking in his office and seeing the picture of him and Billy Graham, because it was David Shepard that brought the Billy Graham crusade to Hamilton. It was him and imagine that Bethel Church in Hamilton brought the Billy Graham crusade to
Yeah.
Hamilton. But that was the scope of his vision. It was like, yeah,
Yeah.
we can do that. Let's just do it. That's what I learned from David.
He allowed us to break new ground.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so then he his term is up, and Laurie Gibbons gets elected as district superintendent, and you get to work with your old buddy Laurie. And
Yeah.
for a lot of us in those days, you and Laurie were kind of like Batman and Robin.
Yep.
Um,
Jekyll and Jekyll.
yeah, yeah, um, yeah, and Laurie, also a man of the spirit, a man of discernment, but very, very different from David Shepard in some ways. Um, Talk to me about the friendship over many years with Laurie. How, like, first you were getting the late night phone call, "Will you come work for free and be my youth pastor?" To at the end of the journey, you being somebody at Laurie's side to um, you know uh, advise and counsel, and he was
Yeah.
having health issues and needed strong people around him, and you became one of those strong people around him. Talk a bit about your friendship over the years and what you learned from Laurie.
Yeah, if I was to sum it up in a nutshell, what I learned from Lori is the most important thing is to care for people. That you can build the most amazing structure, have all the processes, you can, you can have the resources and the finances and the numbers, it can all look really good. But if you don't care for people, if you're not there for people, and so many times when we pastored in Brantford together for 10 years at New Life, and that church grew from whatever it was, 50 or 60 people that we started out with to 400 plus in a newer building. And all of those things were good. But the thing was, the people that attended the church, they bled Lori's blood.
Mm.
In other words, they cared like he cared. He cared for them and they cared for one another. And when we saw that actually happening, when we saw people giving care, to me, it was like, okay, that's how you model it. It doesn't matter how much people kick you when you're down. Like I can remember Lori, there was a the Brantford Blessing Center was not far from the church downtown, and there was one particular gentleman that he would get locked out in the winter time and didn't have a place to stay. And I remember coming into the church one morning, and as I walked in, this man, and I had the key and the alarm,
Yeah.
and I'm walking in, and this man is walking out of the church. And I'm like, I'm shocked. I'm going, what are you doing here? Like, how did you get in? He goes, oh, Pastor Lori let me sleep in the nursery last night.
Mm.
And I thought, wow, that, that's, we're the kind of church that lets downtown people sleep in our nursery. Now
Yeah.
we went in there and thoroughly cleansed it and cleaned it, of course,
Yeah.
but like that was Lori. He just cared. And how we got along, we are so different in our personalities, in what we like. I mean, he lived for baseball. You got to know, he lived for baseball and for hockey. And we coached hockey. We started a league in our church. He coached one team and I coached the other team. So we were rivals. But it was hilarious because we knew what team was going to win every week because we would set it up that way. Because everybody has to win. We wanted that to happen. We were competitive, but yeah, and Lori's love for his boys. I can't. If you knew the time he spent in his car driving to wherever, some hockey arena, some baseball park, some football field, rugby, when his boys were playing rugby, there was just no limit. He would be superintendent all day and then in his car driving to Windsor for a game and then back in the office the next morning at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Like he was very, very compassionate, caring, 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 caring. Yeah.
Yeah. To the end. Yeah.
To the end.
Yeah. As a lifelong Pentecostal, you talk about remembering being 6 or 7 years old and the independent pastor standing up and saying the church is closing, but we're going over to Evangel. And my dad also was a pastor. He started out independent, and he was pastoring, traveling, and he fancied himself in his earliest days being a tent meeting evangelist,
Yeah.
and which is really funny if you know my dad, and
Yeah.
that he's anything but in his early days of dreaming, that's what he saw himself pursuing, and so he was pastoring a little church, independent church, and it was struggling along, just a handful of people, kind of like the one you grew up in, and then the Lord spoke to him about um, his attitude about being independent,
Mm.
and so he went back to his hometown pastor and apologized to him for the attitude that he and some others had held towards their pastor. He went to um, district office and said, "I'd like to um, uh, become a PAOC pastor," and started
Wow.
taking correspondence courses, and And the district soup at the time told him, well, we need a pastor in Southampton. And so I'd be about grade one, uh, kindergarten, grade one, when we were up in Southampton and this little storefront church. But it was this, I think, for my dad and for maybe a lot of people from that generation, maybe your parents. It was a journey from the value of fierce independence, because no man's going to tell us what to do, only God is going to tell us what to
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
to realizing the interdependence of God's people and the brotherhood, the sisterhood. Um, you've always had just a tremendous capacity, organizational capacity to study systems, to um, think through process, to say, okay, here's some benchmarks for change, and you've studied it, you've lived it and breathed it, and I just want to maybe ask you to reflect on what it means when you're wired like you are, um, to being spirit led and discerning, and holding that at the same time of being a policymaker, an administrative thinker, a program developer, new ground. It's because sometimes it feels like people can polarize around those things rather than
Mhm.
having
Yeah.
an integration of those values. How have you managed?
I think, Kevin, what happened was growing up in a Pentecostal church, I I understood the fluidity, you know, or the flow we call it. You know, it's
Hmm.
you get in or getting in the river or whatever, you know.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
we have a million terms. And I understood that, but I realized at the same time there was something missing or there and it wasn't that it was wrong. It was like, you know how a car, if you take one tire off, one wheel right off, it'll still operate on three, but just not like it's supposed to.
take it
And I
easy on
always
the
thought,
corners.
yeah, especially one way. It would just
Yeah,
like, and and I always thought like there's something not clicking here and I don't know what it is. And then, when one of my first jobs in my early career was working for Massey Ferguson and writing the production schedule for the combine plant for building 52 combines a day. Well, if you're going to build 52 combines a day and you have 7,000 workers showing up every day and millions of dollars worth of parts arriving on a dock and in the warehouse, you better have some systems. You better have some process, or you're not going to be in business very long.
right.
And I was shocked into that moment. And I was fortunate. Again, it's how God prepares us. That my first year at Massey Ferguson, I worked in a department called specifications that basically made all the changes to the computer. So every department had to come through our department, and I knew everything about every department because I had to make changes in those departments. So whether it was parts, HR, purchasing, or expediting, doesn't matter. I was familiar with it. I didn't know it in detail, but I was familiar. The other part that God had prepared me in that was I grew up on a farm and we had large equipment. We had a combine. So when they interviewed me to advance me in the company to the next position, the person who was interviewing me was actually the plant manager of the North American combine plant. And he said, yeah, you've worked in specifications. We see the work you do. This is excellent. What do you know about combines? And Kevin, I was just a smart aleck enough to say, well, what do you want to know? And to this day, I can't believe I said that. I just
How
looked at him
old
and
were
said,
you,
what do you
Mark?
want to know?
How old were you?
I would have been 23.
Oh
23
man.
years old. Yeah. What do you want to know?
Yeah.
And he goes, well, you know, what can you describe a combine? I go, I can tell you anything about that combine you want. I said, I grew up on a farm. We operate a combine. In fact, when I leave here tonight, I'm going to run the combine all night till midnight for my dad. Oh, okay. So he says, come with me. He takes me out into the plant and we're walking through the plant. And he's pointing out things and I'm just telling him what they are, what they are. And he goes, so you understand how this works? And I go, I guess so. He goes, well, we need to do some testing. And so they did some of those psychological testing. And I learned that I think linearly. I can reverse engineer things. I can see something and then build it from the ground up. And it was at that moment that I started to think, what has God got for me here? Like, what am I going to, because I always believed I don't work for Massey Ferguson or for a company. I work for Jesus. He's the one that provides my salary. Oh, they may sign the check, but all this goodness comes from him. And so I'm like, okay, what is he? And Massey Ferguson helped me and prepared me, trained me, spent a lot of money on me, training me in systems and strategies and processes and all these things. And then about that time, I was helping Pastor Laurie at the same time. He was the youth pastor, and he was going to go away. And as he was going, he said, "No, I want you to take a few services." And that those early days, Kevin, was when I began to realize I can invite the Holy Spirit into the planning of a service as well as into the service. So I'm not going to wait till I show up at the service and say, "Oh, come, Holy Spirit." It's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm
No.
planning for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
How can I be listening to the voice of the Spirit to say, what do you want to do? And let's do it in advance, and let's do it in a way that's seemingly, you know, in order,
Hmm. Hmm.
because you and I both know, being raised, we've seen a lot of disorder,
Yeah.
and that
We,
always disturbs.
yes, we have seen indecent and in disorder.
Yes. Um, and and in that as well, like that, you asked about the balance of the two. I think the balance is you invite the Holy Spirit into the planning, but you also and expect that it'll happen in the service. But even in the service or the ministry or whatever it is, the event or the whole planning of a year for your church, be open-handed as well.
Mhm.
Come in and say, uh, I'm going to be flexible though. We're not just going to, it's not going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 6, 7, 10.
Yeah.
It may have, and leaving space for the Holy Spirit to operate. I think that even now, it's hard because I'm not in the same church every week. If I'm ministering, I'm in different churches, but I'm always trying to stay attentive. What is happening here in this moment? And I've gone, because often what happens is at this stage of my life, being retired, the district will call and say, hey, could you go to such and such a church? The pastor's just resigned, or something has happened, whatever. And it's not always, they're not always celebrating with a cake, let's say that. And so you go into those moments, and sometimes I'll have some kind of message prepared, but I have to be attentive to, wow, I'm operating right now with a congregation that's really, really hurting. They don't even understand what's going on. So maybe I just need to back up the train a little bit. They don't need 4 points or 3 steps to whatever.
Hmm.
They need to know that Jesus is with them this morning, that the Spirit is going to bring them peace and hope, and they do have a future, and that this is his church and he's in control. And just recognizing that as well, that just being attentive, I think is.
So linear thinking plus adaptability and a willingness for spontaneity.
Yeah. Yeah. And and the other thing is, and it steps back to what you said, what did I learn from David Shepard? That spiritual authority too. Being able to discern emotion from spirit, from the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Like sometimes as Pentecostals, it's like, the greatest gift is tongues and interpretation. No, no. To me, the greatest gift is discernment. Because then I can discern, is it a tongue? Is it a prophecy? Is it an interpretation? Or
Mhm.
I can discern in that moment what is really happening here. Is
Mm.
this emotion? Is this of the spirit? And the other thing is the anticipation. I think sometimes we've lost the anticipation. I go into a service on Sunday morning if I'm preaching, and I'm hoping something happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's like when we were kids. I used to love going to Sunday night because I never knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Somebody, there could be a healing, there could be a prophetic word, somebody could be dancing up. Who knows? And it's like just prepare for the unplanned.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Well,
again,
yeah. I, you know, in the work that you do and have done over several years now, you've come alongside many churches, many people in ministry to coach them, to help them grow, to clarify direction. Um, and but sometimes you're called to come alongside, or you get a call, and it's somebody who's going through grief, disappointment, stress, feelings of betrayal, overwhelming conflicts. Um, so for you to be spirit led and discerning and have something of value to contribute to them, um, how do you think God prepared you to help others in their grief, in their chaos, in their brokenness?
yeah, I think he prepares us with our own brokenness. Uh, it's Leonard Cohen who says, "Ring the bells that still can ring."
Yeah.
Um, there's a crack in everything. That's
Mhm.
how the light gets in.
Yeah.
And it's those cracks in our lives that the light shines through. I think, you know, personal tragedy, my own. When my wife and I found our first child deceased in his crib with
Yeah.
crib death
Yeah.
as a child, and
Yeah.
walking through that and grieving through that, and understanding that healing doesn't come overnight,
Hmm.
and memories don't fade, instead they crystallize and they become even more special. And so all of those pieces, I think, in dealing with the crises, especially with pastors, it's many times just sitting and listening. Even last night, someone called me. I was having Wendy and I, now we're in the tea sipping mode, Kevin. After
Yeah.
dinner, we go for a walk and then we sip tea, and Wendy does a puzzle, and we listen to whatever. And I was right in that, and my phone, had my phone off, but I saw it light up and a name came up. And I thought, I, and I said to Wendy, I should take this. And she goes, yeah, take it. And probably an hour and a half later, I listened to just a horrible, horrible scenario. Man lost his wife, lonely, all like everything, no hope, no, and just despair. And and just I I honestly I didn't have words other than I listened. And when we finished, I prayed with them. And as soon as we hung up, he texted me because that's the most help I've had in 6 months. I've been dealing with this. And so we're gonna continue this. So I think just being present, having relationship. If we're trying to lead people and we don't have relationship, there's something desperately, desperately wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I watch some of my neighbors, who now at this stage of their life, they play on the old guys baseball team or the old guys hockey team. Those guys would die for one another.
Mm.
They show up for one another. If they're sick, they're there. If they have an emergency, one of them, they're present. And I think we're trying to be everything to all people, and I think we just need to back up a little bit and say, no, I need to focus on this person or listen to this person. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such, I also have those kinds of experiences with people. I imagine a lot of pastors do. But it's strangely draining and at the same time regenerative.
Yeah.
You know,
It's the draining part that I don't like.
yeah, that's right. Um, uh, Guy from my church and I were out with another guy for supper last night, and sat with them for 3.5 hours, and just in the sacredness of the table.
Yeah.
He opened up about things that he hadn't hardly told anybody, things that had happened to him when he was 8 years old,
Wow.
and then getting an email this morning, of I could hardly sleep last night, that I experienced what I experienced with talking with you guys. Just it's the best I've felt in a long time. Those are
Yeah.
it's the laying down our life, isn't it? That
Yep.
that actually brings us to life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
And I
want to.
like I like what you said there too about sharing a meal together.
Yeah,
I I I think we've really missed something there. We get so busy with so many things. Like I don't know
yeah.
what it was like at your house, but my mom, when we were growing up as boys, there was always like a casserole or soup or something because people dropped in.
Hmm.
Like I've lived in this house for 23 years. The only people that have ever dropped in and won't be doing it anymore is my mom and dad or
Yeah,
Wendy's mom.
yeah,
And we miss that where people now we have to set up an appointment. My people are going to call your people, and we have to book a room. And it's like, yeah,
yeah.
let's just get together. There's a Tim Hortons just around the corner. Every time I go in there, there's three or four guys. They're always there. They're just hanging out, having a good. I'm like, I want to be those guys.
Yeah. Well, God forbid the day, but if I get old enough that my kids have to put me in a home, I think I'll be okay.
Yes.
Because, oh, cool.
Yeah,
I got
yeah.
all these people
All the,
to be with.
yeah.
Get to know all
And
these people.
and if we make it to that, I know with my dad, for the just before he passed, I mean the ratio in the nursing home was like 10-1. The older ladies, and they just fussed over him. Oh, I'm like, this guy's got the life, man. Anyways,
This podcast is not sponsored by Chartwell Nursing
sorry.
Homes.
It
So,
was no, he was at Seasons.
oh, seasons. Okay. Um,
Sure.
yeah. Hey, just on yeah, I mean, you've just tagging on the thought of all the years of working and coaching, and it's not all crisis. A lot of times it's sharing and
Good.
helping people to um, have a vision for change, and helping people to unearth what they're having a hard time articulating, but I'm sure you've also, on occasion, seen some people where not much happens because there's not much work ethic. Uh, and now you're laughing.
Don't
Um,
get me started.
don't get don't get you started. Well, I'm going to get you started. Can you talk about having a strong work ethic in ministry, and some of the ways that that needs to be tempered and balanced. Other times it needs to happen in the first place. What's been your experience as you've worked alongside so many?
Again, I'm a process person. And so
Mhm.
to me, this is where it begins.
Yeah,
It starts with your calendar
yeah.
and the things you put on your calendar and how you prioritize it. In one of my coaching sessions earlier this morning, um, the person I was coaching, they were telling me all this number of things they had to do. And I
Hmm.
said, okay, let's go back through the list. I want you to go back through the list and I want you to write them all down, list them all out. And she had about 7 things. I said, okay, what are the 2 things that absolutely need to get done today? And she said, this one and this one. I said, okay, so take everything else off the list. All I want you to work on is those 2. Oh, but she said the others are important. I go, not as important as those 2. So prioritizing. The calendar is really important. One of the churches when we were doing Regenerate, and I won't say where, I won't tell you it rhymes with whatever. I walked into the pastor's office and another leader, and I'll tell you that later's name if you want it, because he was there to verify it. We walked into the pastor's office and we looked on his wall, and he had his annual calendar on the wall. And all that was marked on the calendar was days off, statutory holidays, and his vacation.
Whoa.
Now, let me tell you, there was a reason why his church at one time had been probably 120 to 140, and he had had a bit of a Gideon revival, and he had worked it down to 20 or 30
Hmm.
because that's what he had prioritized. And so that was kind of one of the first things we began to work. So the work ethic is absolutely important, crucial. If you're not putting in 40 to 44 hours a week of work, I mean, that's in your office or in your car, in the community, whatever. With my staff in Leamington, one of the things that I made them do, and it was hard because when you have journeyman pastors, they've been a pastor for years
Hmm.
and they know how it's done. And when I told them that one day a week, and they had to tell me which day it was a week, they had to be in the community. They were not allowed in the building. I want to know what you're doing in the community, whether you're at the food bank, whether you're at the pregnancy crate, like whatever. I don't care. The female staff, of course, was at the pregnancy crisis center. And I said, I don't care what you're doing. You can start a baseball team. You can hand out donuts. You can do whatever you want. You be in the community, and I want to know what you're doing in the community. Well, how am I supposed to prepare for my message? Well, by this time in your life, if you can't prepare, you know, the evening before, then there's a bigger problem.
Yeah.
And so it it's keeping people on assignment as well, helping. And you have to do that with your own life. Like I know I'm retired, but I have to get up every morning when I get up. The first thing I do physically is I make the bed because I know the bed's been made. I can't get back in it.
Hmm.
Now, I'm not going to be pinned by the sheets. Now,
But there
now,
is a coach.
but you see that chair back
Yeah.
there?
I just need
Baby,
to sit here and meditate.
I'll be in my chair.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to have this rhythm and this discipline. And there's a reason why some people, and I don't want to say they succeed, but they sustain in life, they sustain in ministry, they maintain their health, they maintain their, the Bible says, and Jesus grew in wisdom, stature, favor with God, and favor with man. that to me, that verse is just so important because I need to grow in wisdom. I need to be reading these books. Here's the two I'm on right now. And this one here, just because this is about retiring.
Mm.
I'm on the chapter of death and decline.
Mm.
And it's very telling. So
Mhm.
wisdom wise, I have to grow in wisdom. I have to grow in stature. I do my stretches every day. I rode my bicycle today. I'll go for a walk after supper tonight. And in favor with God spiritually, I need to be in that zone and in favor with man relationally. And I just find if I'm working on those, and it's not easy, I'll say that. It's not, but it sure is rewarding,
Mhm.
especially
Mhm.
when you hit some of those sweet spots. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're self-awareness is really important. I mean, we've across the district, one of the things we've given everybody the opportunity for in the last 15 years is coaching, number one. Berkman assessments, number two. Every once in a while, take your Berkman. I keep mine right here in my desk, right in my drawer. I look at my Berkman, I go, oh, that's why I'm that way. Oh,
Mhm.
that's why, one of my not so good points is my Berkman would say that if I'm in a room and the leader isn't leading, I will take control. And that, and I have to watch myself.
Yeah.
I have, and so, but that's self-awareness. That's part of my work ethic. If I watch that, then I don't overload myself. I realize, no, that person is in charge. That's their job. This is my job. That's their job.
Mhm.
Again, coming back to the 40 to 44 hours a week, that's our work.
Yep.
But think about the best volunteer you have in your church. Think about that guy that's working at in Windsor at one of the plants, or maybe his wife's a teacher, or whatever. And they're not only doing their full-time jobs, but they're showing up Sunday morning, 2 hours before the service, prepping for worship, prepping for a meal, teaching Sunday school, whatever, through the week. They're visiting and that. They're putting in another 10 to 12 hours a week. And I hear pastors say, well, I put in my 40 hours a week. I go, you're not done.
No.
You lay down your life for this thing. And that's how it gets done. I I don't know how else. My dad was my hero.
Mhm.
And he would say to us boys, now listen, he goes, none of you boys are smart enough. You're not going to be doctors or lawyers. My dad was
He was an
raised on a farm.
encourager.
Yeah, he was just honest. But
Yeah.
you're not smart enough. You're not going to be, and he goes, we're not, he goes, I'm not rich. You're never going to be rich. He goes, so you're all going to have to work for the rest of your lives. He says, so you go in there and you work every day as hard as you can because you're not working for them. You're working for the Lord. And because you do that, your reward will come from the Lord. Now, he goes, it may not come. And he always used to say this, payday doesn't come on Friday. He goes, but we live differently, boys. We are healthy. We have relationship. This is how we live. And I think there's people I know they got cars and boats and vacation properties. I would not trade position with them for anything because godliness with contentment is great gain. And when we're faithful to the Lord, He'll be faithful to us. Faithfulness begets faithfulness.
Mm.
That's my work ethic, anyways.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't know if
good.
that works
That's
for
really good.
everybody.
Yeah. No, I resonate with that. I love when people say, "Are you busy?" I say, "I'm busy doing the things that I love."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you love what you're doing, then you can go a lot further than if you're doing it begrudgingly or because
Yeah.
you have to. Yeah.
I I remember I can't I wish I could remember who the preacher was, but this just is indelibly stuck in my mind. And I'm just reminded of it. My wife, I could just hear my wife come in downstairs. She volunteers at the hospital.
Mhm.
Okay. because she wants to, she loves
Mm.
to.
Yeah.
But this preacher said one time, he goes, I just don't want to get to heaven and show up with two pails full of beach sand and shells and say, Here, Jesus, this is what I did for you. He goes, I want to show them these are the people that I've brought with me.
Yeah.
And I think even in the I have to be cognizant of this in my retirement years. It's just not about sitting back and sure, we've had some good moments in the last even few weeks, just been able to go out for dinner and do a few nice things. But at the same time, I got to preach this Sunday twice, and but that's
Game on.
that's what I,
Game on.
that's
You
who we
love it.
are. That's who
Yeah.
we are. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Game on. That's good. I like that.
Yep. Yep. Just got really just one more thought to explore with you. And this podcast is about God at work in Canadian cities and people that have something to say to that or are doing that. And uh, Steve Pike from Urban Islands Project
Yeah.
and Next Wave, he gives a definition of what urban is. He says that urban is when you have the three HDs. HD1 is high density, so where the population is very thick. He says um, high diversity. So you have high density, but then high diversity. The extremes are extremer. The
Mhm.
range is wider in terms of culture and values, and the
Yeah.
third is high disparity. Uh, the the street affiliated displaced person, with the cup out on Bay Street. There's
The
high,
irony.
yeah, the multi-million-dollar houses in the city core, and then 2 streets away you got crack houses. It just the whole city trips over itself. And when you think about the particular challenges for us in Canada when it comes to doing ministry in urban settings, we have most of our PAOC churches, and we got a lot of them, but they're mostly suburban
Yep.
and outward. Not as many that are in the core. There's a lot of unique characteristics that make it quite challenging to plant a new church uh, in the city core. Um, Parking, real estate prices add to all of the challenges, but at the same time, uh, that is a target rich environment. That is a place where people need Jesus. You've had the privilege of being able to interact with a lot of people all across North America. And what makes you hopeful for urban ministry? Is there things that you see that give you hope that we might be able to make a difference in our cities?
Yeah. The density, the diversity and the disparity, like you're right. Those are the three HDs. They pound at you. But I think in the midst of them, there's these wedge spaces. And with the density, if you didn't have the density, then you wouldn't have the people. And so now suddenly you've got people. Now, and space is at just what you said, space is at a premium. Where do you get space in an urban setting? Well, everybody's got a home. And I'm finding there's this drive lately, and I think there's a trend amongst the Gen Zs that are leading right now. We don't like to we sometimes ignore them. We think, well, it's supposed to be this way or that way or whatever, but they're leading in the most unique in opportunistic spaces that they're meeting. It's not uncommon, especially here around where I live, and we were in St. Catharines one day, and we just walked into a donut store, and there's a Bible study going on, and
Mhm.
I'm like, wow, like I am encouraged by that. And it wasn't a bunch of seniors. It was Gen Zs. They're all there. They're all on their phones and
Yeah.
everybody, and they're sharing. And I'm like, wow. So they're wedging into those spaces, and that encourages me. The thing about them personally is they've there's this renewed sense, and I don't, for lack of a better term, of deepened spirituality, like spiritual disciplines. They want to know. Just a few weeks ago, I was preaching, and when I got done, there was an altar time and a prayer time, and after that was done, I was walking out of the sanctuary, and this young girl came to me, and she was very apologetic. Is it okay if I speak to you? I don't want to take your time. I go, no, 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 it's okay. It's fine. And she had, a lot of piercings, a lot of tattoos, a lot of things. And she said, I'm sorry, I don't even know how I'm supposed to speak to you. I said, you just talk to me like you're my friend. We're friends. I said, you just go ahead. She goes, I'm really struggling. I'm a new believer. And she says, I really have to clean up my language. I really struggle with my language. And Kevin, honestly, because I struggle with my language, I'm thinking, here's this baby Christian, and she's struggling. And I said, you know what? You and I have something in common. And she's like, what? I said, we both struggle with the same thing. I said, so I'm going to pray for you and you're going to pray for me, okay? Oh, I don't know how to pray. I go, well, you just follow whatever I say. And I prayed for her, and then she prayed for me. She was just sobbing at the end. And I'm thinking, she has this deep spiritual hunger to grow in Christ. And at any cost to her, embarrassment personally, whatever, it's like, I want to do this. And I'm like, I was moved by that. I was so challenged by that, thinking to myself, wow, like I didn't, that's not even what I preached on. But that's, yeah, I think there's a generation that's coming, and especially some of these the new wave of immigration that are coming to our urban areas. I mean, that's what's moving into those areas. That's why there's that high diversity. I mean, you've got the Filipinos and the Latinos and the Slavic and the, boom, 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 all these, but yet they they attach themselves to one another. And what's interesting is, and I don't say this despairingly, they don't tend to head to white churches. they they like the cultural, they want after they've worshiped, they want to eat together with one another. And it doesn't matter. I'm thinking of a church, and I don't want to point it out or name it out of embarrassment for them. They wouldn't be embarrassment. I'm proud of them, but they're I will say this: they are a Filipino congregation, so they do their service in English, but they've attracted a whole wave of Nigerian believers, a whole wave of Latino, from Guatemala and El Salvador believers. They've attracted um, South Korean and Chinese believers. And I'm like, this is crazy. And when I'm there, I ask them, why do you come here? Oh, well, we're friends, and in the parking lot, some people have come on buses because that's their transportation, and some are driving Mercedes. So you have this huge disparity, diversity amongst them, and yet they're worshiping together, they're encouraging one another. And when I see that, I'm like, I I go crazy. Like I'm like, this is the church. This is the new church. It's not that new one that's out on the highway that's got the fancy sound system. And that's okay. That's all good. I'm not talking that down. I'm just saying there's this wave coming, especially, and I think it's going to come out of urban churches. I don't think it's going to come out of the suburban churches. I think they're doing something in urban churches that other people are going to attach themselves to and say, you know what, that that that's the way I want to live. I was watching, I think it was an Instagram reel, and it was someone from Central America, and the guy said, you know what the difference between people in Central America and people in America are? The only thing we do in our homes is sleep.
Hmm.
We do everything else in community.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking in the urban setting, you have to live in community. You got no choice. Like you're not going to go home to your 400 square foot apartment and sit there all day, no matter how good the television is.
Right.
You want to live in community.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I think that's what encourages me. And this whole the whole wave of the cultures that are especially in Canada that are coming into Canada. I think we're going to lead a wave of revival because of that.
Something I'm seeing too is that the uh, the storm surge of postmodernism that has spread through culture, uh, that those who bought the tickets and decided to move there to postmodernism, that there's a lot that are now at a stage where they're saying, I'm just so tired of being cynical. I'm so tired of taking everything apart. Is there anything
Yeah,
that's good, anything that's whole and pure, and there's I think there's a movement of people that are going to um, you know get rid of their Nirvana shirt and
yeah,
get a shirt with a happy face on it, and not do it as a sarcastic joke, but because they want to embrace happiness.
yeah,
They want something that's good, and I
yeah.
think I think you're there's culture, but then there's deep culture, and you get to what's the deep culture, and people will come.
I, I've always differentiated that as culture and context.
Mm-hmm.
The culture says that every kid from grade 6 to grade 11 has to wear Crocs, and that's the culture, and they have to
Yeah.
listen to Taylor or to whatever. Okay, that's
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
But context is what happens, a block from your house. Context is what happens next door. That's where our real lives are lived.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I I always remember on the Canadian $5 bill years ago. There was I don't know if you remember when the blue $5 bill first was redone, and there was a picture of the kids skating on the pond.
Yeah, I think that
Well,
was way back in the 1900s, wasn't it, Mark?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was a few years ago, 20 years ago. But there was a poem that said the days of our youth were spent in three places: the school, the church, and the hockey rink.
Mm.
And then the last line says, but our real lives were spent on the hockey rink. That was on our $5 bill.
Really?
That's how
Wow.
Canadian, that's how
Yeah.
Canadian, that's
Yeah.
how and I thought, okay, how do we turn that our real lives were spent in, not in church, but
Mm-hmm.
in relationship with others,
Mm.
sharing Christ, sharing the things of sharing good news, sharing, like, not that cynicism. I'm looking for the day, Kevin, when people don't have a Nirvana or a happy face. They're just wearing a blank t-shirt because what's inside is so radiant coming
Yeah.
out of them. It's
Mm.
it's like, yeah. I want that.
Yeah.
I want that.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, Mark, this has been so good, and we'll have to do this again. Uh, but thank you so much. You've been a real inspiration to me over the years, along with many of my peers. We're grateful for you,
thank
and
you, Kevin.
keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for this opportunity. Bless you.
All
Have a
right.
great day.
Well, I always enjoy having a good conversation with my friend Mark Collins, and that was a good one. On my next episode, I'm going to be talking to Valerie Good. She's a Christian psychotherapist, and no, that's not an oxymoron. That's a beautiful combination of things. And she's doing some incredible social work and has some insights that I think will be helpful to all of us in the work that we do serving the Lord in our settings. So until that time, I'm your host, Kevin Rogers. Come on back for the next episode of Sidewalk Skyline Podcast.